Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to the Cardfellas Podcast / live show here Wednesday night, 10:30 Central Time. We are back after a week off. Chris, it's good to be back, and tonight we're going upscale. We're going to go top shelf. If we talk about the ranks of sports cards, I would say what we're talking about tonight would be like the top shelf liquor, not the rail liquor that is cheaper. We're going top shelf tonight.
Well, I'm going to let you do this show, then I'll see you later.
No, you're drinking with me tonight. You're drinking with me. We're all drinking on the same tab.
All right. Well, as long as you're buying.
I'm buying. And actually, you know what? That's actually factual. I am buying some of these cards. And this was kind of my idea and on this topic, and it really kind of came on some of the searches I was making on eBay, and I kind of came to you and I said, hey, let's talk about 1984 Topps baseball Tiffany set. And you said, yeah, let's do it. Let's see if there's enough information out there. And there was. And I think what really drew me to this set was I loved the 84 Topps baseball design set. I never had a lot of those cards because it was a little bit before I got into the hobby. Yep. And so I didn't really have those cards. I always looked at them from afar and I wanted them, especially during that era when it was, you looked at guys like Don Mattingly, his rookie card. It had, Cal Ripken very early in his career, Tony Gwynn very early in his career, Daryl Strawberry very early in his career. So I looked at those cards and they were really kind of almost, I want to say, unobtainable, but they were harder to find back then. So I always liked this set. And so I said to Chris, hey, let's talk about 84, but we put a twist on it. We said, let's talk about Tiffany. And we're going to get into that specifically in this show.
Yeah, I remember that Mattingly card being a $100 card. And fun fact, I've never owned one. And today doing this stuff, I started looking it up and I have bid on a few because I'm like, you know what? And you can buy, just a raw, regular 1984 Topps Don Mattingly for about $10 in pretty good shape raw these days. So I'm going to have to just own one just so I can say I own one in case I die tomorrow. I can check that off the list. So.
Let's not do that. But I think we should talk about, first of all, our show. We're back. We've talked about this for the last couple of weeks. We're trying to produce more content and give you guys a little bit more. If you're listening to us on the podcast, we do have a YouTube channel. We have some exclusive content there of some unveils and some retail buys and opens and that sort of thing. So go check us out on YouTube. If you follow us on YouTube, go to a podcast, wherever you get your podcast, and look us up, Cardfellas. Leave us a positive review. Leave us comments. Like this stuff. We'd like to hear from you, so we always want to put that plug in. So before we get talking about the Tiffany set, I figured we'd throw that plug in there. And, you and I have some plans to do some other things coming up here as far as content and sharing some other, little tidbits. We're going to get the shorties rolling again. You did a retail reveal. I have something right here that will be of interest to some people. A PSA card reveal coming up. Just got this in the mail today, so I think there's 13 or 15 cards in there. I can't remember, but it had been at PSA for over 16 months.
Wow.
That was a $25 per card sub before it shut down. And, so I already know the grade, so it's not going to be new to me, but for people who want to look and see what's out there, I'll post that video once I open that box off camera. But back to the topic at hand. Let's get back into this 1984 Topps Tiffany, and let's break down the Tiffany experience, if you will. Topps, of course, the biggest producer of cards during this era, and so they were producing cards on top of cards on top of cards. I mean, it's the junk wax era, right? Mm-hmm. And then they finally reveal this this higher end, shorter print set called Tiffany. And it was revealed to the world via dealers and hobby stores. It really wasn't. There was some that apparently that were sold via direct from Topps, but back then there wasn't an internet. Like, you couldn't really go online and say, I'm going to order these directly from Topps. So,
Right.
you kind of had to have those connections. But so dealers and hobby stores got these sets, and really short print. And I think as the years went on and collectors started to realize just truly scarce these were, they became more and more popular.
Yeah, I think it was learning how scarce these were and how many of the normal cards were out there as well.
Right.
They started doing this in 1984, and it probably had something to do with, the fact that, Topps kind of owned the market throughout the 70s, and then in 81, they started getting some competition from Fleer and Donruss. So this was kind of another way to set themselves apart. Fleer ended up making a glossy set starting in 1987, but Topps kind of had the only glossy set for quite a while. They didn't actually call it Tiffany at the beginning. I think they started calling that later on. It was just kind of a special collector set. And like you said, these are cards that were made during the junk wax era. Even though, in my opinion, I don't think 1984 is still the junk wax era, but it's probably the dawn of the junk wax.
Right. That's the best way to put it, for sure.
And so Topps started making these sets in 84, and they made a traded set as well each year through 1991. What's kind of interesting is, you look at the print runs. This was they made 5,000 of these, I believe, in 84, but that number kept going up and down. They would do 10,000 one year, then 5,000. I think there was one set that only had 3,000. And then I believe there's another set that no one's really sure about the print runs. But in any case, it's much fewer. I know on this set, the 84 set, there's only 9,000 of them total throughout the whole set that have been graded by PSA.
Right.
Not a ton of them around. They are pretty expensive. I mean, compared to their brothers, they're definitely more expensive. Here's a look at the box. We'll pull that up for the folks who are watching on YouTube. So nice red box, and I'm just kind of a classy looking box. The card numbers in the set are the same. The big difference, the only really way you could tell the difference, is that the fronts are glossy, and the back of the paper, the back of the card is more of a bright colored paper, rather like almost like a magazine style paper, where the paper on the standard issue cards is more like kind of like a newspaper look to it. It's kind of more of a gray look. So that's the big difference in the cards. I always do a little history lesson for everybody. I'll do that right now, kind of what was going on at that time. If you were going into the spring here of 84, going out to buy these baseball cards, you were celebrating the 1983 World Series champions. That was the Baltimore Orioles. They won the World Series over the Phillies. Cal Ripken Jr. was the American League MVP. He was very young at that time, 23 years old. And today was kind of funny. I actually ran across a scouting report, a high school scouting report from Cal Ripken Jr. It was done in 1978. The scout was out there. I think it was a Phillies scout that was scouting him as a pitcher. And in the scouting report, it said that he played shortstop when he was not pitching, but lacked the mobility to play shortstop at the major league level. And wasn't a viable shortstop prospect. So, so there you go.
I hope that scout is long gone.
It was kind of funny to read it.
Oops.
Dale Murphy was the National League MVP going into this season. He was the 83 MVP. Strawberry was the Rookie of the Year in 83. He was in the Topps traded set, but this was the first year that you could find Strawberry in packs. Of course, the Tiffany set did not come in packs, just in the set. But baseball 1984, the Tigers won the World Series over the Padres. A young Ryan Sandberg won the National League MVP for the Cubs. In the American League, the MVP was Willie Hernandez. He was a journeyman relief pitcher. He won the Cy Young. He won the American League MVP and the World Series MVP, and pretty much disappeared from the face of the planet after that.
Crazy.
So that's your
Willie Hernandez
baseball history.
I love when you do that, Chris, because you bring up guys' names that I remember when you bring them up, but I would have never. If you would have asked me who was the NL MVP that year, or AL MVP, it was. I would have never in a million years guessed that. But when you give me his name, you're like, oh yeah, I remember him having that one fantastic year, and clearly, brought the Tigers to near the end. But just an awesome year for baseball. And when we get into the set a little bit more and talk about some of the more popular cards, you're going to see some of the icons of that era, and the cards are just phenomenal. And you mentioned a little bit about the card stock. The way I heard it or read, kind of like how it was described was it's the white card stock versus the gray card stock. And you said it was kind of like that newspaper. And but let's describe the front first for people who are reminiscing about what does 84 look like. I think most people who are interested in our show probably know the 84 look. You have the action shot, and this is the Mattingly card, which is his rookie and the most popular card in the set. You have the action shot, him, great picture of him, at his position at first base, where he was phenomenal, and action shot. Then you have the mug shot in the lower left, the name in the lower right, and the position, and then the team name, just vertically down the left side. It's just comes together really well. The one thing that we've talked a lot about recently, it seems like, with these cards is, the colors kind of didn't match up with the teams, but they were bright. They were vibrant, and even on those Tiffany cards, they were even more vibrant. So I didn't pull some pictures of like Gary Carter or Andre Dawson, but they had bright pinks, and so the Topps cards on those were the best word I can describe is vibrant. And when you look at the backs, those were vibrant as well, and that's what separated the Tiffany card from the regular set. Was it had that pop to the color in the back. And for those of you that maybe didn't have Tiffany cards, like I did not have Tiffany cards growing up, they're very similar to the Topps traded sets. In the regular sets, they had that vibrant back to kind of differentiate, and so that's kind of where Tiffany, the Tiffany cards, was different. And when you look at this picture, and if you're listening to us on the podcast, you really see the dullness on the regular card. And so that was how you could determine whether or not it was a Tiffany card. Was obviously the back, but the gloss cover, the gloss front, I should say, that covered the front of the card.
Yeah, it'd be nice if they would have done something else to differentiate it. I feel like an idiot every time I open a modern pack these days and I get a prism that's like, is this a sparkle prism, a scope prism? And like,
yeah,
really nice to figure out what kind of prism this thing is when I get it. So this is a little simpler than that because there's only one other version, but that old prism thing always has me scratching my head, and maybe that's the old man in me. But
no, I think you're spot on. There's so many variations that it's a little bit more difficult to. In the Topps traded ones, Tiffany versus regular are very hard to differentiate from the back. And so if you're buying those online, you could eventually be duped and buy the wrong card, thinking it's a Tiffany, but it's not. So you really have to look and see and feel it and check the glare on the front, because that's where it really shows up.
For sure. It's kind of interesting because I remember this set, when we were kind of in our heyday of collecting in the late 80s and early 90s, when everyone else was too. But this was kind of the revered set. And now I think more people are interested in the 83 set and the 85 set because the two big rookies in this set, neither one of them are Hall of Famers.
Right.
So it kind of lost its sizzle. But, I just remember this being a big deal set in the late 80s because everybody wanted the Mattingly. And really by the late 80s, kind of Strawberry had lost his luster a little bit, but Mattingly was still very much a sought-after player at that time. So.
No question about it. And that's the one thing. You and I brought up Don Mattingly's name quite often on this show because, it's a little bit surprising to watch his career and then realize he's not in the Hall of Fame. And, right. He just kind of got, caught up in injuries and played on bad teams, which is hard to fathom, playing on bad Yankees teams. We think of the Yankees as this juggernaut, and he never really got over that hill. And so, but when you look at this set again, I mentioned it at the onset, was just the iconic players that are in this card and how just cool they look in their action photos, and then the the mugshot, and it just looks to me it just looks like a complete card. And we're looking at the Nolan Ryan card, and that's another one. The Nolan Ryan card, it got hot pink, the hot pink Astros, and his name is hot pink, and his Astros were not hot pink, for those of you that were not around in '84, but they did not wear hot pink uniforms. So Topps, again, deviating from matching the cards to the color of the cards to the uniforms there. And this is one of the more popular cards, again, in the set. I will get into the PSA pop reports and all that other stuff later. But, Nolan Ryan cards always do well. And they continue to sell well. And they continue to be, favorites of the hobby because he was such a dang good pitcher. And this is the card that you referenced, Chris. This is the Daryl Strawberry. And to me, this is one of the cleanest cards of a guy who, the sky was the limit for this guy back in, '84, right? Like,
yep.
This card is the one you wanted, or the '83 Topps traded. But those two cards in that era, along with the Dwight Gooden traded out of this one in '84, man, those are the cards to get because the Mets were coming. Right.
Yeah, I think I saw Scully. They were, a lot of Vin Scully stuff this week with him passing, and I saw a video today of him calling that World Series game 6, Buckner game. So it was just kind of reminded me of the Mets winning the World Series that year. Obviously, they didn't win game 6; they won in game 7. But that game 6 certainly turned the tide of that series, and it's crazy seeing it. I mean, we've documented that story a few different times before in the show as well. But when you see it happen again in video, and you're like, wow, the Red Sox really should have won that game.
100%.
Even the ball that was hit there, it's like, oh my gosh, that was a routine play. And then the whole deal with Kevin Mitchell scoring before on the wild pitch, and it was just an insane series of events that caused that collapse. So, and
you did mention though that in '84, '85, '86. This card was one of the most sought. It made this set so much more interesting and valuable because it was Daryl Strawberry and Don Mattingly that were looked at as like, these guys are going to be the cornerstones of Major League Baseball for many years to come. And, they don't get me wrong, they had good long careers, but nothing compared to what the potential could have been. Mattingly because of injury and Strawberry because of drug issues and other things. But in that era, that's what made this 1984 set so appealing.
Yeah. So, and I didn't get into. We'll get into the values in the Mattingly card. We kind of skipped that, but this Strawberry card, a PSA 9, and this Tiffany card just sold for $140, and 8 for $95. To compare that with the regular card, a PSA 9 you can pick up for about $30. The standard issue and a PSA 10 is going to cost you about $200. Strawberry raw standard $5. This card raw and Tiffany is going to be about $40 to $50. So you're looking at 8 to 10x the price on that. So
yeah, and when you start to dive into the PSA pop reports, you're going to see why there's that jump in price. Bottom line is it comes down to scarcity. And that's really what made this set, Tiffany set, I think all of these Tiffany sets really, really popular and valuable. As I think people started to realize, again, we back in '84, '85, '86 didn't have the internet to tell us this is how many print runs there are on these sets. Like nobody really followed that. And then they started to realize, boy, we're not seeing these pop around very much. And so I think dealers and collectors started to realize just how scarce these were. And as soon as PSA started grading cards, that's when people hopped on these cards to get them graded. And I think they started to realize, wow, we could be sitting on some money here, because it was just unheard of. It was unheard of to have short prints, to have print runs. It just wasn't something that happened. So, Topps kind of stumbled upon they were 84, 85, 86 short print runs, unheard of. And so that was once that was discovered. I think that's when the popularity of these came out. And I couldn't find it anywhere, Chris. Maybe you could. I don't know what these retailed for in '84.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you either. I don't know.
I can tell you they're, you can buy one of these sealed, I guess, I don't know, on Amazon for $2,800, to this set. So, but I don't know what they retailed for. And, if they were marketed differently or I'm sure they were marketed differently, but, I don't know if in the moment in 1984, if the dealers or the card shops knew exactly what they were sitting on at that moment. And, I'm trying to think back, did 84, I don't even think 84 had a sealed set, the regular one. I'm trying to think back. I don't know when that started. I'm trying to think maybe 87 was the earliest that I've seen,
right.
In our little circles, but
that's the earliest that I remember seeing as well. I'm pretty sure that there was a Flair factory set in 86, but I don't know if I've ever seen a Topps one.
Yeah. And I don't think so either. I can vividly picture not 87, but nothing from 86. So right. I would assume 85 or 84, that time. So this might have been the first factory type seal that they put on these sets for Topps. And so it might have stood out at that time. But again, once they started realizing just how scarce they were, that's when the values and the interest really increased tremendously. Another card from this set that I think is just fantastic. It's too bad it doesn't have him swinging the bat because, his swing was legendary, but this is the Tony Gwynn in the brown Padres jersey, which I think, is again, screams 1980s and the Padres are bringing that brown back, but would have loved to have seen Gwynn swinging the bat and hitting the ball because, he was, when you talk about pure hitters and some of the best to do it, he is, if not at the top, very close to it. So, but again, a little bit of splash of pink behind his mugshot. So Topps loved to have those showy colors.
The name, the team name, and his name was in kind of a orangish brown though, so that matched up.
That did.
The cameras were very different back then too, and I think if you go through the whole set, you'll probably be hard pressed to find too many action photos. But I think probably what stands out to me in this photo is just how svelte Tony Gwynn looks in this photo.
That's a good point. That's a great point. Yeah.
He became a little more rotund as the years went on, as we all do, but he's pretty good in this picture.
Yeah, that's a great call out because he did fill out pretty good in his later years. Here's Ripken, as you mentioned, not long for the shortstop position according to that scout. So, kudos to you, Chris, for finding that ice cold take by that scout. But great picture here by Cal. I like this. This is another. Again, this shows the uniqueness of this card. You have an action photo. It's him in the batting cage, taking some pregame BP, and then you have his mugshot, and you get the colors to match as well. And I think that's what makes this card really, really pop. Is everything just looks. Minus the blue background on the, there's always a little something, but it does look like it's the sky in the background or matching his eyes or something. I don't know, but I just love this card. To me, is one that I could see myself going after.
All right, so here I got it. As long as we're talking about this Cal Ripken card and this report, I'm pulling up the report right now. Physical description. Here, you'll love this. Physical description: no glasses or known injuries. He's built as handsome as Jim Palmer. He's a fine-looking, long-armed, big-boned physical specimen.
Well, okay.
Those are more words of wisdom from the scouting report.
All right.
He does look like a fine specimen right there.
So, was this scout looking for good baseball? Was he looking for good baseball players or just good-looking guys? Like he's telling management. here's Jim Palmer, here's Cal Ripken, here's it's like, all right. Hey,
funny, though,
hey, Bill, we need good ball players too.
A Phillies scout compared him to a Orioles player before he was an Orioles player. The scout is there's no full name here, but first initial was J.
Okay.
Jay Consoli is the scout, so it wouldn't have been Bill. Maybe it was Jim or John or something like that.
Jim or John. Okay.
Either way, he thought that Cal Ripken was handsome, but didn't have the tools to play shortstop. So.
Okay. Well, thanks for coming, Jim.
Let's move on. All right. Here's another guy, Ryan Sandberg. He ended up winning the MVP that year, the National League. Is now out there touting cannabis. That's his new thing. If you drive through Chicago, you'll see a lot of billboards of Ryan Sandberg pimping the flower. But he was a heck of a second baseman in his time.
He was, and for people who don't remember this era too, WGN was on cable. For people who had cable, so like the Cubs were on, and they always played day games. Yep. So like the Cubs were always on. It was, and we didn't have endless amounts of channels, and there wasn't a lot of things on TV. So if you wanted sports during the day, you couldn't flip on ESPN and watch endless highlights, or have Skip Bayless or Stephen A. Smith tell you what's going on or what to think. But you watched the Cubs, and it just was kind of on the background. And I think that really helped Ryan Sandberg become really kind of the superstar he was. Like you said, I mean, he was a fantastic baseball player, but, I think a lot of people knew who he was. He's another guy too. The scouting report doesn't say it, but, an attractive guy, has, just good looking, strapping guy, and, great base. And so like he had a fan base that was wide. I remember, there were people talking about him as, oh my God, look at him. He's a superstar athlete. He's this, he's going to have his career in the booth, like this sort of thing. So I think that made him a much bigger star than some of these other guys. And I think that's how I remember him, and that's how I got to know him. Yep. Was by watching those Cubs game on WGN. And this card to me is another fantastic card. Iconic jerseys. I think that's the one thing that I bring some of these cards back is the Padres jersey, that Nolan Ryan jersey. It's just, this was one of those cool Cubs jerseys as well that I you can remember him wearing on a noon game for the Cubs on WGN. And so really cool card. The name and the Cubs name doesn't match. It's a purple, but I still think it works for this card, and I think this is one of Sandberg's cooler cards.
Yeah, Ryan Sandberg spelled his name wrong. That was another thing that kind of stood out. He wasn't Ryan; he was Ryan.
Right.
And I think what you said is really spot on though about the WGN thing. And it's a summer game, so it was a game that was played when the kids were home from school, and the Cubs were on basically every day. Yeah. So I mean, I think it's a whole generation of people probably in their late 40s and early 50s right now. And back then, kids didn't go to daycare. I mean, you either probably went to your grandmother's house, or you just were left alone at home, and you were either watching the Cubs while you were eating lunch, or maybe you made grandma mad. She had to turn off General Hospital so you could watch the Cubs. So that's what was happening. And I think there's a whole generation of people who are now in their late 40s and early 50s that grew up watching Harry Carey and
absolutely
Sandberg and Rick Sutcliffe and Stoney. Steve Stone was the other guy that was with Harry Carey all the time. And it's funny, you go back and listen to those broadcasts, and Harry, we kind of think of him and make fun of him these days as kind of this guy that was aloof and had no idea what was going on. Steve Stone was absolutely horrible. I mean, if you go back and listen to these broadcasts, like he was like the voice of reason is what I remember him as. But now I go back and watch these broadcasts, and Harry Carey carried the whole thing. I mean, Steve Stone was horrible. And it was one of those things, I think, when you have that personality like Harry Carey, maybe you need a moron to sit next to him. that doesn't add much to the broadcast because Harry Carey was so bigger than life.
Right.
But
that's a great point.
That's how we grew up, and I remember doing the same thing as watching the Cubs games during the day.
Right.
And I feel like the same thing can be said for people who grew up in the South. I think the Braves were on everywhere.
Yes.
Turner Broadcasting had the huge signal, just like WGN. It was a similar deal, and I think everybody in the South grew up watching the Braves. So
yes,
kind of the same thing.
Absolutely. So great card there. Another great card. I love this card too, and I wasn't a big Wade Boggs fan, but I did like the Bo Sox. I did. But I think this card's another great card. Just reminds me of watching Wade Boggs. This is probably a slapped double to left center that maybe rolled to the green monster. That's just kind of how he hit, and that's again just a great sharp looking card. You got the you got him with the head up looking, and then you got him with his his red mustache in the mugshot. So I've seen this card many times on eBay, and I've thought a couple times, I'm like, I'm ready to buy it because I think Boggs has a big following in Boston, and I think if it's one of those cards that I think if more people see it and you could get this graded. I think I pulled this actually from eBay. And it's a live. I mean, that looks like a really sharp looking card right there. Yeah, and they were selling for around $20 to $25 for this raw card.
Wow.
Which
Tiffany, that's a good deal. Yeah.
Yes, it's a Tiffany card. Yes. Yeah. So, but again, just another sharp looking card of a player who really defined that era. It was the third baseman of the league in the 80s.
And like you say, Boggs still commands a lot of demand. And I listen to a lot of YouTube during the day. I'll just have it on and kind of listen to it as a podcast. And I listen to 1 Million Cubs quite often, and he sells a ton of kind of low value cards on eBay. That's kind of his deal. He sells, hundreds of cards a day. And he said one of the best sellers that he has is Wade Boggs cards in a Tampa uniform. So
okay.
You say he has this huge following in Boston, and I know he's very popular there, but apparently he's extremely popular in Tampa as well. And he was he's probably the first player to ever play there that went to the Hall of Fame. So
sure, yeah, that's interesting. Interesting little tidbit. Another guy that's superstar. I think when you talk about superstars, his name doesn't normally come up like at the top of your brain. But Mike Schmidt, just an awesome career with the Phillies.
Yeah, over 500 home runs as a third baseman. That kind of power at that position was unheard of at the time when he was playing.
Yeah, and 2 back-to-back Phillies powder blue and maroon jersey cards. This one's Pete Rose. And Rose, this is him kind of, I guess this would kind of at the end of, this would be the end of his career, really. I mean, this is, when he's kind of ready to become the player manager type of guy that he turned into. But, this and the Schmidt card, man, those powder blue Phillies, those are some of the beauties. I had the opportunity to go see a Phillies game this year and walk through the concourse and the memorabilia area, or the place where you get all the gear. And I tell you, everybody just gravitates toward that powder blue, whether it's a T-shirt, whether it's a jersey, whether it's whatever the case may be. Like that just screams 80s baseball, and I love every minute of it. And you got the pinstripe down the side of the jersey, all the way down the pants. Phenomenal. Love those jerseys.
And they just invited Pete back to the stadium, I think, just in the last week or two, to kind of celebrate this team and him. And so that was cool, I think, for him. I mean, it's everything that happened with him. It's kind of a shame, and hopefully at some point maybe they will let him in the Hall. I don't think they will while he's alive, but I think at some point it will happen. There's no doubt that he was one of the best players ever play the game, and just pure hitter, and great nickname, Charlie Hustle.
Charlie Hustle.
You know, just a cool guy. And these cards too, I mean, I've been selling a ton of kind of late 70s, early 80s cards lately, and you put Pete Rose up and it sells immediately. They're cards that people are interested in, and people still love Pete Rose and his fans. I think they side with Pete and not so much with MLB on the whole thing. And who knows what will happen, but I think at some point he's going to get in, and he probably will get in before the steroid guys do, I think. So
yeah, it's going to be interesting to watch. I've realized that we've talked through some of these cards. We're kind of cycling through these, and we have kind of left off the PSA reports. We're looking at George Brett, but Chris, if you want to kind of go back and we can talk through the most popular cards and through the cards that have been the most graded. If you want to do that, I'll let you kind of dictate what you want to talk about next.
Yeah, so I'm firing through these real quick because we have taken a lot of time looking at these cards, and more than usual. It's been a while since you and I have done a show together, so I think
yes,
throw me off. But let's talk about this card first, and then because I've looked up some information on this.
Okay,
because I thought it was super interesting, and then we'll get into the PSA stuff. But this is the strikeout leader, National League active career strikeout leaders cards. And the reason I love this card so much is I think it's probably the last time Nolan Ryan wasn't the all-time strikeout king. In this card, Steve Carlton had 37.09. Ryan had 36.77, and Tom Seaver 32.72. All three guys ended up being Hall of Famers, of course. Mm-hmm. Strikeout leaders today, career league, because I don't think Nolan Ryan will ever be beaten.
Me either.
Ryan, 5,714 career strikeouts. Second is Randy Johnson, 48.75. Roger Clemens, 46.72. Carlton retired with 4,136. And Blyleven is fifth, 37.01. And Seaver is now sixth on the list, 36.40. But what I wanted to do is look up the current players and see, where are they in a trajectory to catch Ryan. So Justin Verlander leads all current players. He's 14th on the all-time list, 31-35. He's 39 years old. This is his 18th season. So he is on
unbelievable.
Pace, on pace to break Nolan Ryan's record if he pitched 14 more seasons. So he would be 53 when he broke the record. Scherzer is he's got 31-29. Basically close to the same season. He's played one less season than Verlander. He is 1 year younger, so he would break Ryan's record at 51 years old. But I think the main thing to think of, though, is neither one of these guys have ever beaten the crap out of Robin Ventura.
No, they have not.
That's all I got. That's my best joke. We'll call it.
That's a good and it just shows you the true dominance of pitchers in that era. And that's just baseball in general has changed so much. If there's, they always talk about the untouchable records, and that's pretty close to being untouchable.
Yeah, guys just don't pitch. If you go and look at the stats of these guys from the 70s and the early 80s, so, the guys would pitch 30 games and they'd have 17 complete games. And
yes,
you're pitching like that, you're going to get more strikeouts than a guy gets pulled in the fifth inning every time he plays. So that's a record that will never be beaten unless they really change the way they play the game.
Yeah.
And the other thing I'll say is, I think the stolen base record's another one that unless the game really reverts back, I think the athletes are there, but guys get paid to hit home runs, and that's what everybody wants to do, and that's what the game has become. So I don't know if we'll ever see anyone come close to Ricky Henderson's stolen base record either.
Yeah, no, those are two good records that are probably in pretty good shape for not getting broken. All right, let's get into the PSA report real quick because we have touched on it a little bit. In this Topps Tiffany 1984 set, there has been 9,011 cards graded. Now, in contrast, the regular set, there has been 65,000 cards graded. So it shows you just how many cards have been graded. In fact, Now, the one card I'm going to talk about first is the Don Mattingly card, because that is the most popular card in the set. Don Mattingly's regular rookie card from 1984 has been graded 16,000 times. So all of Tiffany combined is 9,000. So it just shows you, again, back to the scarcity. Number one most graded card out of the Tiffany set is Mattingly's number 8 card. That has been graded 835 times with 52 10s. So there's only 52 10s out there, 323 9s, and then 356 8s. The second card is the Nolan Ryan card. That's been graded 453 times, only 23 10s. Strawberry is number 3 with 393 graded, 90 10s there. Tony Gwynn is number 4 with just under 300 graded. The Cal Ripken base card at about 250 graded. Sandberg's number 6. Boggs is number 7. Mike Schmidt is number 8. Pete Rose is 9. George Brett, number 10. Ricky Henderson, number 11. A National League highlights card with Ryan, Gaylord Perry, and Steve Carlton is the 12th most. Then Reggie Jackson, then the Cal Ripken All-Star card. And then rounding out the top 15 is that strikeout card that Chris had mentioned. And those are the only 15 cards that have over 100 cards graded. So frisky low pops all over the place with this. Sorry, I got a bug in my face. Lot of frisky low pops with these. So that's really what got my attention with this set. Was I was starting to find a lot of these cards raw, and I started to find them in what I thought was in really good shape. And I was like, there can't be that many of these cards out there graded. And so digging into this, you really find that there hasn't been. And you can get some of these cards, like we mentioned, at a pretty good price. And I think there's some really, really good condition cards out there. And when talking about the price, Chris, you mentioned a couple of those. Like, I have some recent sales here. Nolan Ryan, PSA 9, $150. PSA 10, Tony Gwynn, $770. So you can get close to, $800. Cal Ripken base card, $480. Or no, I'm sorry, $780 for a 10. A Sandberg, close to $400 for a 10. So there's some really good value in here if you're a seller. And yeah. I think when you look at those pop reports, the Cal Ripken base card, there's only 29 10s, and you're getting that for under $800. If you're a Cal Ripken fan and you're a Cal Ripken collector, you're going to want this card in your set. And so I think these are one of those cards that are one of those sets where the cards you can pull and buy raw and maybe get some value in getting them graded for, who knows what PSA is going to be charging here soon. But, you can get them relatively cheap. And I bet you even if you come back an 8 or a 9, you're still going to maybe get some of you're going to get most of your money back, but you might hit a 10. Some of these cards, I think, I don't know exactly how well they held up. Just looking at the cards, the front of the cards look great. Like we were showing some of these cards. All the cards pictures that we've shown, if you're watching us on YouTube, or I pull those from eBay. So a lot of those are on eBay. Now, some of them are pulled from slabs that have already been graded, but there are some good cards out there in good shape. I think the biggest thing for the Topps Tiffany is there was a little bit of the etching or the chipping on the back. And when you get a little bit of a ding on a corner or an edge, it really shows up because of that white cardstock. Yeah. But for the most part, I think there's potential to go out and get raw cards and at least get an 8 or a 9.
Yeah, I think the scary thing with that, especially the gloss stuff, and I got into the Fleer gloss stuff a couple years ago. The surface issues can become a real problem for you because of the glossy nature. And I actually did a little bit of an analysis on this. You take a Mattingly PSA 8, and right now those are selling for about $300 in a Tiffany card. But anything that looks halfway decent in a raw is going to cost you $300 or more. I mean, I saw some $300, some $400.
Mm-hmm.
So you're looking at raw cards that are basically more than what a PSA 8 is. So that's before you do grading and before you do any of that, you incur any of those costs. So you would have to get, and a 9 just sold for $550. So if you're buying a raw card for $350 and you're investing, $50, $60 into getting it graded, unless it hits a 10, you're basically just going to be breaking even on that card.
Yeah.
So I almost think maybe the way to go with this, if you really wanted to get into a grading strategy with this, would probably be to try to make an offer to somebody on a set, if there's a set out there, and pick that up for maybe a couple grand, and then go ahead and submit, a lot of these cards. And I would guess that, you could probably sell just about all of these cards graded at some level, because I'm sure there's someone out there trying to do a registry on this thing.
Absolutely.
Registry nerds will be all over that. And like you said, there's so many low pop, just the average guy card. A lot of those have only been graded, a handful of times. So I think if you really wanted to get into this from a grading and kind of an investment purpose, I think probably the set would be the way to go. But the other thing you got to be concerned about with glossy cards and sets from 40 years ago is bricking too. And
yes,
very well could run into that as well if you buy a set and you're $2,000 into a brick set.
Yeah, that could be a definite issue. No question about it. I think that's something that I haven't seen a break of it, but you bring up an excellent point about the gloss. You just don't know how it held up over 40 years, and that might be the issue. You might have a perfectly centered card. The corners might be strong, the edges might be, but you get an 8 because the surface is not pristine enough to give it either a 9 or a 10. So, I would say this is definitely a buyer beware, especially from a raw standpoint. But you can go out there and get a couple of these cards relatively cheap. And I think I mentioned to you, I saw an Andre Dawson. It's not his rookie. It's not one of his cards that it just looked like a cool card, and it was $4 with shipping. And I said, I'm going to buy it. I haven't gotten it yet, but it's one of those cards that I saw it and I liked it. I'm going to buy it. And I think this set. I mean, if you go on eBay and you search 1984 Topps Tiffany, you're going to go on there and you're going to go down a rabbit hole. And yep. I'd probably say you're gonna end up either favoriting something or buying something. It just has that appeal.
Exactly, and I did exactly that today while I was looking these things up. Is I put some bids on some cards because you're like, oh, that's really cool, and I could use one of those. And this is a set that I just don't have a lot of these at all. So
no, and they just, again, we've talked about it, the scarcity of it, right? Like there's not that many Tiffany cards out there, and so it's not like, okay, you buy them all up and here's a whole new batch of Tiffany coming in. It's like, no, these are going to be hard to find eventually. And so I think that's the thing that, people have to understand. And that's really one of the reasons we talked about this set tonight, was because it is scarce. And we are trying to dig in a little bit deeper on some of these sets that are unique. We've talked about action-packed football. We've talked about other things. So we're trying to bring you guys some topics and sets that are a little bit off the beaten path, if you will, or make you stretch your thinking a little bit as you're diving into the hobby.
Yeah, we've definitely gone into the obscure over the last month. So.
Yeah, maybe we have to bring it back. We got to bring it back to center a little bit and do 1986 Topps football.
Yeah, there you go.
I don't know, maybe, or we just continue to be abstract and unique and not really care what people think about our oddity choices. But I don't know. We'd love to hear what other people want to see, right? Like that's the thing about it too. If anybody has any recommendations for us,
drop in the comments on YouTube.
Drop it in the comments on YouTube. And if you're listening to us on the podcast, come check out our videos. Chris, you just did a retail video where you did an unveil. What did you buy? What did you get? What do you think? What's your recommendation for people?
So that was a 3 packs of 2022 Bowman retail. which were I think $6.99 packs, and then I did 2 packs because it limits 5 at Target. I think I did 2 packs of rookies and stars that I just found, and I think those were like, I don't know, $3 or $4 packs. And I pulled a really, really cool Jamar Chase card, which was one of those prisms that took me 10 minutes to figure out which kind it was. It was a cool card. But I have another one that I've already opened and I haven't posted the video yet. But I'm a big fan of Chronicles, and last year I bought a lot of Chronicles because we were calling it the Chronic.
The Chronic.
I love the Chronic. Something about, pulling all those rookie cards. And I know people don't like college uniform rookie cards, but I do. So I just enjoyed it. Well, this year in Chronicles and in 2022 Chronicles, half the cards you get are actually, like old, not old, but veteran players in their rookie uniforms. Kind of like what you would see in
Prism draft picks.
In Prism draft picks, right.
Yeah.
So I'm not so much a fan of that, and I almost am embarrassed to show the video because I kind of destroyed the set while I was opening it and didn't have anything really positive to say about it. But now that I've gone back and look at those cards and I put them in penny sleeves, and I'm like, these are actually kind of cool. I like them. I don't know if they're really going to have any real value, but they're cool.
So that was different from the Chronicles from last year, because Chronicles last year was just all rookies, right?
Yeah.
They didn't have those guys. Okay.
Yeah, this is actually the 3rd year of Chronicles, and what I like about it, Chronicles draft picks in football, what I like about it is all the different sets that are in there. So I love that part about it, and I love just opening packs and just getting piles of rookie cards. And now when you open the Chronicles, half of your rookie cards aren't really rookie cards. So I'm not a big fan of that. And I think it's also going to be confusing for people 5 years down the road when they try to buy one of these cards and go, is this an Aaron Rodgers rookie card? Nope, it's not. And really with Rodgers, I think you would know, but like Mahomes. There's Mahomes cards in there, and you're like, is this a Mahomes rookie? No, it's not. It's a 2022 card. So I think that's going to be kind of problematic down the road too. But I think it maybe is just Panini knowing that this draft class isn't super, people are not searching out a lot of these guys, and they're not going to be named guys. So they're like, let's put these cards in here.
Sure.
But maybe it's just Panini trying to figure out a way to make more cards and make more money. That could be too.
And that's a blaster you bought?
Well, that was actually 5 retail packs that I opened, and that will come out. And I told you after I opened those, I'm never buying any more of these. And I think I actually said in the video, this will be the only Chronicles I buy. But then, of course, I saw a blaster box the other day. And
it's because you asked me to go grab an adult beverage. Yep. I declined, and then you went and bought a blaster box of Chronicles because I turned you down.
Right. So I'm like, I have nothing to do, so it's going to be retail therapy, and I'll pick up a blaster box of Chronicles, which I'll open on camera at some point. But
all right. Well, that's we'll look forward to that. I'm interested in seeing, because I'm right there with you. I love the Chronicles, but that was when it was rookies, all rookies, and you could open a box and get 2 or 3 Trevor Lawrence cards that all were different, and then get Trey Lance that were all different, and you get a Mac Jones that was different. And you got a lot of the really good rookies and a bunch of different variations.
And one other thing to note on this, and I noticed when I opened those packs, one of the cool things about the Chronicles the last 2 years, that there were select cards in there, so you'd get select draft picks. Well, this year Panini has taken select out of Chronicles, and they have, like the Prism draft picks, now they have a select draft pick. So that's coming out very soon too. So keep an eye out for that.
Well, it's good to be back. Good to chat with you again, Chris. Like we said at the top, we're going to try and produce more content. We're going to be out there more. So if you're listening to us on the podcast, we might not always put that content on a podcast because it's hard to paint a picture of the cards that we're opening for a podcast. So go to our YouTube page and watch these unveilings. And then if you're watching us on YouTube, as always, go to the podcast and take us with you on the road or wherever you listen to your podcasts. We're everywhere. We're trying to be. So that's it. It's good to be back. And let's make sure that we give the folks more content coming forward, Chris. I guess that's up to us, huh?
I think that we're really selling ourselves short. We did talk about a Cal Ripken Jr. 1984 card for almost 8 minutes, and then I think we covered Ryan Sandberg and WGN for like 7 minutes. So I think we actually could do a pack opening and literally give someone the full history of that player and the broadcast network, and it could fill that time. So we're selling ourselves a bit short.
Paint the picture like Vin Scully, right?
Exactly.
All right. Well, it's good to talk to you again, Chris.
All right. Take care. Thanks, everybody, for listening, and thanks for watching, and we will talk to you next time.